Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are just getting underway in this 2030 offseason. It's been several days since we last checked in, and we had a lot of things to focus on. If you'll remember from the last episode, we had lost our scout kind of willingly, although he was a very good scout in my eyes. I know some of you have had concerns with him over these past several years. We also needed to find a trainer and a couple of minor league coaches. And fortunately, even though it has only been, like I said, I think 5 or 6 days in game time since the end of the season, we have filled all those spots now at this point. Taking a quick look at our personnel, we ended up needing a new manager and a new pitching coach for our ACL team. Kevin Witt, who was our ACL manager, was requesting a promotion, and he's somebody that we want to keep along. Excellent with development, good with mechanics, good relationships with players. So felt like he was a good guy to keep in the organization. So we promoted him up to high A ball. And then we did fill the manager role and the pitching coach role in our ACL team. Manager Kevin Minch, legendary with development, excellent with mechanics, and expect him to have good relationships. So he seems like he'll be an excellent manager to have working with our raw players right out of the draft. And pitching-wise, Dakota Mitchell, outstanding at teaching pitching, excellent with development, good with mechanics, only average relationships, but everything else about him was so positive that given the opportunity set we had for this position, we brought him on board. Feel a little mixed about what we did with our scouting director and our trainer. Love one of the moves. Not feeling great about one of the moves, and you can see if you're looking closely with the contracts I signed these guys to, who I love and who I'm not feeling great about. Our new trainer, we only gave him a 1-year contract. He's actually really good at preventing all sorts of injuries, but other than that, he's mediocre with fatigue recovery and kind of mediocre overall in rehab. So should be able to do a really good job keeping us from having injuries this upcoming season. But if we do have injuries, how long it's going to take to rehab is certainly in question. Didn't think he was a perfect fit, but do appreciate his outstanding ability at prevention. And then we did move on to a new scout. This is something that several of you have had concerns with our previous scout. Looking at the ratings, I've always thought he was fine. Honestly, the ratings of the new guy we brought on board aren't all that different, but hopefully change is good. I know Jarek Braxton, among other frequent viewers, has had some concerns with us just getting bad information from the previous scout. So we brought on John Servideo. Pretty darn good at everything. He's legendary scouting the major leagues, which is probably what I care about the least, quite honestly, but of the opportunity set that we had with his excellent in the minors and amateurs and outstanding with internationals, hopefully he can help us get up the curve on getting to know our team again, getting ready for free agency, getting ready for international amateur free agency, and hopefully by about time next season is getting underway, we'll have a pretty good understanding again of the opportunity set out there, with Mr. Servideo going to be very busy this offseason scouting up the league. We have just started scouting him on our team. You can see we're average with everybody. He has gotten us 1 scouting report back on Diane Jorge, so we're very high accuracy with him, and hopefully we'll be there with our guys and many other people around the league soon enough. But it's going to certainly take some time to get back to where we were in terms of our scouting knowledge of the entire baseball universe. We also got the development lab underway a few days ago when things got going in the off season, largely I think in line with the plan that we laid out as we were talking through some of our everyday players and, more importantly, some of our prospects. Jake Ortega, we're going to work on plate discipline. Bertrand Albrighton, we're going to work on generating bat speed to try to get some of the power we thought he might have. More difficult program, but we're going to give it a shot. Jaheim Pennyman, the young pitcher, improving control. Juan Rodas, another international amateur free agent like Albrighton that we had high hopes for. Going to put him into a harder program, working on quality of contact, and hopefully maybe hit on one of those two programs and help turn those guys who aren't advancing as rapidly as we hoped into more legitimate prospects. Roussel Shepard, going to work on plate discipline. And then 3 young pitchers, Duncan Marston, who we picked 4th overall in 2024, working on pitch movement. Levi Sterling, another prospect who we picked, I think, 3rd round in 24. Yep. He's getting close to major league quality. Going to work on his pitch movement as well. And then Jason DeCaro, who we picked up in that trade when we traded away last year's AL Cy Young Award winner during the season. Going to work on secondary pitch improvement, hopefully enhance his stuff a bit. We did pick him up when we, as I mentioned, traded away Bubba Chandler, a guy that we really liked and who had been a Cy Young Award winner for us a year ago. As I mentioned, looks like he went to the Yankees and did better there than he did with us, 5-3 with a 3.64 ERA in a 1.5 WAR in just 13 starts with the Yankees. Led or tied for the AL lead in starts this past year. But with DeCaro on board, felt like we got younger. And we've actually made an offer to DeCaro to try to sign him to a medium-term deal. He'll be 25 at the start of next year, so we would be buying out number of seasons, one more minimum season, several arbitration years, and then a few free agent years. You can see the numbers he was looking for weren't crazy. He was asking for $39 million over 8 years ish. We offered him about 34.5 over 8 years. So we'll be paying him a little bit more for the next couple years, but if he ends up developing, I think the final years of the contract were, I believe, $5 or $6 million. We'll be able to see it once, well, if he signs it. Still haven't heard back from him yet, but kind of trying to put him into the type of contract we had with Bubba Chandler, and if that works out, then we'll have gotten younger, and hopefully also we'll get some improvement from him this offseason. So that's the broad plan for the next 3 or 4 months in the development lab, and we'll see if we can get a decent success rate this year, focusing on guys primarily in their early to mid-20s. And we've gotten a few arbitration-eligible players signed already, and we've also made a couple of trades, which we'll talk about shortly. Arbitration-eligible, some of the guys that we were uncertain about as of the end of last episode, particularly the lefty Joe Rock, who was an all-star this year, right fielder Gabriel Gonzalez, and shortstop Brian Rincon, have made offers to all of them. We're not going to make offers to Mason Black, Cody Funderburk, Ben Leeper, or Emmett Sheehan, so it's definitely going to be a very different pitching staff next year than it was this past season. But with the money those players are looking for, feel like there's better opportunities out there. And when we've tried trading those players thus far, there has generally not been a lot of demand, which tends to tell me that the numbers that they would be getting from us in arbitration are probably a bit high for what they are. And I did note that in our effort to right-size our salary obligations a bit, we're going to be moving on from looks like about $13.5, $14 million in potential money that could be on the books with the 4 pitchers we're going to move on from. And we've also made 2 trades. And the reason we're making an offer to Brian Rincon to bring him back next year is that one of the trades we made was moving on from Cameron Cawley, a guy that we had pretty high expectations for, and don't love the fact that we're moving on from him. But he's set to make about $5 million in arbitration this year, and just felt like we couldn't bring back both him and Rincon. Rincon's more popular, so we're going to try to bring him back for a year. And honestly, with Cauley making a little bit less, the trade packages for both of these guys were very similar, but all else being equal, felt like we could get a little bit more for Cauley. As I mentioned, we haven't had a scout, so I have had only when I was making these trades, because you can see these were both 11/6, which I guess was the first day of the offseason. All we had was the OSA reports to go on, which tend to not be very accurate. But I looked at those reports. I also looked at how these players have performed over their major league careers, and I made some guesses because I felt like these were potentially good deals for us. And as we've seen in previous years, sometimes that deal that you see right at the start of the offseason or right at the start of free agency when you're looking in the trade market, you wait to get a scouting report, and all of a sudden the demands from the other team are very different than they were. So I rolled the dice here. We ended up bringing on a couple of pitchers who could help supplement our rotation, although our pitching was still our strength last year compared to our hitting. So I don't love the fact that we are adding pitchers in both of the big trades that we've made. But we did lose 2 key pitchers off of our rotation a year ago, so I think this might make sense. We sent Cauley, as I talked about, who is set to make around $5 million in ARB next year, to the Dodgers. We'll miss the glove. We'll miss the speed. Won't miss his fragility, but we'll miss his potential. This past year was the first healthy season of his 5-year major league career. But over that time, he's put up a 71 WRC plus. As much as we like his glove, as much as we like his speed, the bat's been an issue, and he did have some pretty good value in the trade market. Also traded Homer Bush Jr., who was just a guy that was in AAA for us last year. Got a couple of guys back, as well as a small amount of cash from the Dodgers. We got Andres Medina, who's actually not a big-time prospect. I mean, we only have low scouting accuracy on him, so who really knows? But this is a guy that we looked at in international amateur free agency back in 2028. We thought he was an incredible prospect, and it really doesn't look like he's an incredible prospect anymore. Looks like he might be a useful major league pitcher, but he's also a guy who, with that 30 stamina, is only going to be a reliever. So a useful right-handed reliever, not all that exciting, but he is a guy that I've been looking at for years when we do our review of players around the league. So good to bring him on board. But the more important one is the 27-year-old right-handed pitcher, Chase Burns. Again, we're only average with our scouting accuracy on him now. We were going with low scouting accuracy from the OSA when we made this trade. But the fact that we could potentially get him was intriguing to me, because I look at the stuff, I look at the 4-pitch arsenal, I look at throwing close to triple digits, and he reminds me a lot of Mason Miller, who's been an important starter for us the past few years. And he's got better stamina than Mason Miller, and he's normal in terms of his injury proneness. He's had one really great year in his career. Back in 2029, he led the NL, going 19-5 with a 3.46 ERA for the Dodgers. All 3 of the other years he's been in the majors, his ERA has been over 4. 92 ERA plus and a 92 FIP minus this year. So not the greatest year of his career by any measure. But as I mentioned, I think he can be a right-handed starter for us. And given that we were going to need to move on from Cawley or Rincon, the fact that we could get Burns for Cawley was pretty attractive to me. We've already signed him to an arbitration deal, $4.38 million for next year. I don't know whether we're going to be able to afford to bring him and keep him around for the long term, but I think he's a better option towards the mid to back end of our rotation than some of the guys that we had a year ago. Again, I don't love that I was going off of basically just his stats in an OSA scouting report when I picked him up. But we're scouting him right now with our head scout, and hopefully he won't look materially different than this when we find out more about him. And the other trade we made was one that I kind of mentioned I might like to do at the end of the last episode. Lawrence Butler, who on paper looks like a pretty useful hitter against right-handed pitching, just honestly really hasn't been that over the course of his career. We've had him since the start of this playthrough, and he's got a 91 career WRC plus, and that's exactly what he's also done against right-handers over the course of his career. So he's been a below-average offensive player, even though he looks pretty good on paper. He's competent defensively, but he was set to make $5 million next year before some team options kick in. It's going to leave us a big hole in the outfield. We're going to need to find a starting right fielder somehow through the trade market or free agency, because we ended up dealing him for pitchers as well, but wanted to get that contract off the books and give ourselves a chance to potentially restart in right field. We also had to include a decent minor league prospect, David Avalos. Again, who knows exactly what he looks like. He is a guy that, how did we acquire him? He was a scouting find of ours. Was 7-0 with a 2.36 ERA in rookie ball last year. Don't think he's a big-time prospect, but all else being equal, don't want to give up guys in their early 20s. But felt like we got some interesting guys in return, even though they were older than Avalos. Minor league left-handed pitcher Bobby Holloway, guy who pitched last year between high A ball and Triple A Salt Lake, 3-5 with a 7.27 ERA in Triple A. He's fragile physically, but if he fully develops, looks like he could be a useful back of the rotation arm or left-handed reliever. Again, we don't really know exactly what he is scouting-wise. Sam Hoover, left-handed arm, also played in Salt Lake last year. He was better, had 12 saves, a 2.87 ERA. Don't love some of the personality traits that he has, but we're always looking for left-handed relievers, and I think I like his durability. Not a ton of stamina, but as a guy to get an occasional left-handed batter out, I think Hoover might have some value for us a few years from now. The main guy that we got for Butler, though, was 26-year-old pitcher Caden Dana. And he's another guy who you can see even our scout, who we just hired, doesn't really know much about. OSA, looking at his ratings, looks like kind of a guy, maybe a fourth or fifth starter, maybe a useful right-handed arm out of the bullpen. But he does have a 4-pitch arsenal. We think he does have enough stamina to start. He's durable, so he could mix into the rotation. Limited sample size at the major leagues, and he's certainly been a below-average major league pitcher with that 88 ERA plus and 110 FIP minus over the course of his career. Actually was worse this past year at the age of 26, 6-7 with a 5.93 ERA. playing in our division for the Angels, the worst year of his career. So it's conceivable when we get these updated scouting reports that he's not going to look as good as I thought. But he's making the major league minimum next year, and he gives us another guy to mix in to the potential starting rotation. And since we kind of wanted to get rid of Butler anyways, figured I'd take a flyer on Dana. I feel like the upside for Chase Burns is probably the highest. Dana to me is more just a guy. But again, I felt like all in all with the packages that we were able to get, even with some of the secondary pitchers that were thrown in, I kind of like these deals in theory. And I was worried that if I waited for perfect information about exactly what I was getting, if I was getting what I thought we were getting, the deals might not be there in a couple of weeks once we had a scout on board and full scouting reports on everybody involved. So a little bit risky, but they were two contracts that we kind of needed to get off the books anyways, and felt like maybe we've added some interesting pitchers into our organization who are young enough that we could be building around one or both of them over the next several seasons. And with that, we're finally kind of caught up. As I mentioned, we'll wait and see what happens with Rock, Rincon, and Gonzalez for the arbitration offers we made to those three players. Hunter Brown, kind of an interesting situation. Picked him up as a minor league free agent in March. He had a really nice year for us, 7-2 record, 3.29 ERA. Started some games for us, worked out of the pen, put up a 2.5 WAR, and he was named an All-Star for the first time in his career, so incredibly productive for a minor league free agent. He says he's looking for $18 million a year for 3 years. So there is a part of me that wants to submit that qualifying offer to him to try to get some draft pick compensation. But if he ends up accepting that offer, I think he's overpriced. And even more importantly than that, we just don't have the salary space to be able to do that. That would cripple us even further until we're able to trade him or trade other people to get him off the books. So I'm still debating whether or not to give him the QO. We rolled the dice with similar-ish players last year with Kyle Bradish and Nick Lodolo. Made the QOs to both of them, and both of them declined. So there's part of me that thinks we've got this figured out, and maybe we should try it with Brown. Actually, I'll go here and we'll see what he's thinking. If I offer him a 1-year deal at $19 million, says he's going to test the market if he doesn't get a serious offer. $20.4 million a year for 2 years, so he's cutting the years down. But he's not happy with us. But he didn't accept the $19 million 1-year offer. I think I might roll the dice, give him the QO, and hope he doesn't accept it. I'm sure some of you are screaming at me, "You're an idiot" right now. But I'm sure some of you are saying right now, "That's right, man. Put it on the table and try to get some assets and some more resources here for the A's." So we'll see how that works out. The other thing that is going on, in addition to our arbitration-eligible players that I mentioned, we're just in the very early stages of trying to re-scout everyone who's on our 40-man roster. And then we're going to have to get more aggressive in terms of trying to scout and get ready for free agency, which is going to be starting in less than 3 weeks. So going to continue to work the trade market over the next few weeks, try to see if maybe we can get a few more resources for some of those arbitration-eligible players that we don't want. Find out if we've got anyone who won awards during award season, I can't imagine it's going to be particularly fruitful for the A's after a brutal 71-91 season. But we'll find out those things over the rest of the course of this episode as we get ready and prepared for free agency 2030 to 2031. And as we move forward, Brian Rincon signed the deal with us. The fans happy with that. Fan interest increases slightly. We were at 50 before, though, and we're at 50 now. So it was apparently very slight. And we also did just get Jason DeCaro signed to that extension that I was talking about. I don't even know if we're up to very high scouting accuracy on him. We are now. He kind of looks the way that he looked with our other scout. As I mentioned, we've got him in the development lab this offseason. Hopefully work on improving one of his out pitches, which I guess is technically either the fastball or the curveball. Getting one of those a little better hopefully will help with his stuff. But thought that for what he is, paying him a little more this year when he was going to be making the minimum and then buying out potentially a few free agency years made sense, as I alluded to. Actually a little higher than I thought. I thought $6 million was the highest we had made it. 6.5 and $6 million in the final 2 years of the contract, but those are both team options. So we've got control of him through his first free agent year and potentially his second and third free agent years if we want, giving him a little financial certainty, and feel a little better now about the trade away of Chandler, because Chandler was signed to a similar-ish contract, but he's older and there's less years left on that contract. Also, as we talked about when we made this deal, DeCaro, a much better personality in the clubhouse, so hopefully he'll give us similar performance to what we got out of Bubba Chandler the last few years. And if DeCaro somehow wins a Cy Young Award, that would be a very pleasant surprise. And we finally have our team completely scouted here as far as the 40-man roster here on November 16th. So we just started another big scouting task list of 117 guys, everyone on our team who's going to be Rule 5 eligible. We figured that was the next big priority because the Rule 5 draft coming up in just over a month. So want to get that figured out. And once we've got a good thought on all of the potential Rule 5 guys and who we may need to protect, probably we'll turn our attention to getting ready for free agency, which is going to be starting in less than 2 weeks at this point. And we just voided Mitch Keller's option year. We picked up Chase Lee's immediately on the beginning of the offseason, but Keller was set to make $1.4 million, so it wasn't a huge number, but he had a very rough year for us last year, 2-5 record with an ERA of close to 7. He didn't have much value in the trade market, and just another way to get a little bit more guaranteed money off of the books. We've already gone through the Gold Glove, Mariano Rivera, and Silver Slugger awards, and no awards at all for the Oakland A's yet, and certainly would think that those would be, particularly in the case of the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger, where there's multiple award winners, those would be the ones most likely where we might get some attention. Going to be pretty surprising if we have a Rookie of the Year, a Manager of the Year, Cy Young Award winner, or a MVP this season. And as kind of expected, no major awards, no minor awards for the Oakland A's this off-season or this year here in 2030. We did have Jackson Farish finish 6th in the Cy Young Award voting. He was 12-9 with a 3.47 ERA over 200 strikeouts. Patrick Sandoval, who we had with us a year ago when we won the World Series on a very reasonable contract, finished 5th for the Yankees, but made about $4.5 million this upcoming year, or this past year. Max Fried of the Rangers, though, the winner, led the league in wins, 15 and 11. Led the league in innings pitched, and he's led the league in both of those categories for at least the last 3 years. Quality start percentage, FIP minus, into 8.1 WAR. So an excellent year for the veteran Max Fried, who is now 176 and 84 in his career with a 3.32 ERA. And he has led either the AL or the NL in wins for 4 consecutive seasons right now. National League Cy Young Award, Jared Jones of the Pirates, our old buddy the knuckleballer Andres Rojas, did finish second in the voting, but Jared Jones of the Pirates, 13 and 6 with a 3.17 ERA, led the NL with a 74 FIP minus and put up a 5.3 WAR. American League MVP Wyatt Langford of the Texas Rangers is now a 4-time AL MVP, won for the first time in 3 years. All he did was lead the league in runs, hits, tied for the league lead in triples, led the league in ribbies, batting average, slugging percentage, OPS, WRC plus, and with 49 homers, he probably wasn't too far away from a triple crown. Take a look at the standings and see exactly how far he was. He was 7 home runs away, as Lazaro Montez had a huge home run hitting year for Seattle, but monster season for American League MVP Wyatt Langford. Not surprisingly, it doesn't look like anyone except Colt Keith, who received from very ancillary support. No one besides Keith got any votes for Oakland for the MVP award. Over in the National League, Brock Wilken of the Milwaukee Brewers is your MVP. Led the league with 40 homers, also hit .295, drove in 111 runs, put up a 5.8 WAR for the Brew Crew. And did notice that a guy who was a member of our Oakland A's several years ago for about a season and a half, O'Neal Cruz, finished 3rd in the NL MVP voting this year. Spent time with both Cincinnati and Atlanta. Overall, 38 homers, 96 ribbies, a .275 average, 142 WRC plus, and a 5.8 WAR. And not making all that much money. You may remember we had him, as I mentioned, for about a year and a half. In that year and a half plus with us, got 34 homers from him, so not even as much as he hit in just one season between Cincinnati and Atlanta this year. And salary arbitration hearings are tomorrow. Not going to be any hearings for us. We've signed all the guys that we've wanted. Still have continued to look at the trade market, and there's just not much value in Black, Funderburk, Leaper, or Sheehan. Black would have some value if he wasn't going to basically miss all of next year, but we'll be moving on from all 4 of those pitchers who are in their 30s, which, as I talked about, will save us some additional money on top of what we got from trading away Cawley and trading away Butler. Although, to be fair, when we traded away Cawley, we ended up having to pay Burns decent money in arbitration, so not as much savings there as we might have hoped. Still going to roll the dice on the qualifying offer to Hunter Brown. Still says he wants that $20.4 million over 2 years. Definitely would be huge if a guy who we signed as a minor league free agent, who had an all-star year for us, and we end up getting a supplemental pick from having him making the major league minimum and having a great year for us. That would be fantastic. If he opts in, I think we should be able to trade out of the contract without too much pain. Oh, and one other thing I've checked on since the last episode, I think I mentioned I thought that we'd be picking in the top 5 in the draft, and I despite as disappointing as this past season was for the A's, I think I underestimated a little bit how many other crappy teams that there were, because we're actually set to pick 8th if everything goes as expected in the lottery. Now, clearly we could get luckier, clearly we could get unlucky, but I think it's fair to assume that we'll have a top 10 pick. But if we moved into the top 5, that would certainly be a victory given where we are right now. Yeah. Hunter Brown accepted his qualifying offer, so we rolled the dice on that one and lost. We definitely can't afford to have him around at $18.9 million, so we're going to need to look how to get him off the books. And we've made it to free agency. Let's see if there's any interesting international free agents this year. Whoa. Alfredo Magana out of Cuba looks like a potentially excellent starting pitcher. Potential 5-pitch arsenal, durable, but also looking for $27 million a year. So not a number we're going to be able to play in the area of by any stretch of the imagination. Andres Vega, second baseman. Got some personality quirks that aren't so positive. Looks like a borderline useful player. Rest of the guys, at first glance, admittedly, just taking a quick look at the star ratings with a scout who is relatively new, don't look particularly exciting. Looks like, as expected, a lot of pretty high-end relief pitchers on the market. Take a little bit of a deeper look at some of the top players who are available as free agents. Jordan Lawler, Colson Montgomery, Jet Williams, Junior Caminero, the highest regarded, at least by our scout, but you can see our scouting accuracy is not great. That's something that we're going to need to be working on in the coming weeks as we get ready. We're not going to be playing at the top end of the market anyways. You can see with that fact that we flew too close to the sun with that qualifying offer that we basically got no money to spend at this point. So we're going to have to address that. But players out there who could presumably help us, but we're not going to be playing at the top end of the market with the batters, and presumably we won't be with the pitchers either. As I mentioned, some pretty interesting relievers in Clase, Munoz, Alvarado, Duran, as well as starters Taj Bradley and Alfredo Magana. We've already talked about Magana, the import from Cuba. All of those guys looking for pretty significant money. Our buddy Mason Black, only looking for $1.5 million, but as we've talked about, he's going to be injured all year. Josh Hader on the market at the age of 36, but he's going to be looking for some decent money. Andrew Nardi seems to be a year-to-year guy on free agency. He's out there as well. Mike Vassell, who was briefly a member of the A's a few seasons ago. So there will be some interesting players for us to look at. But again, I don't think we're going to be playing at the top end of the market by any stretch of the imagination, which is unfortunate because we've got to improve this team. We only received a 1-year extension this offseason, and we need to have a winning record. When we do our review, we also need to improve fan interest, and that's a very high priority for ownership, and upgrade in center field, hoping that eventual promotion of the young center fielder Jake Ortega will help us on that front next year. But improving our fan interest is going to be real difficult without having the money to really play at the high end of the free agent market. And we're also dealing with the fact that we don't necessarily have great scouting reports on any free agents or anyone that we're going to want to trade for. So it's going to be a grinding off season with a lot of work, probably not going to do too much initially. But hopefully when all is said and done, it will be a productive offseason for us here in Oakland. We do have the benefit of having gotten that unexpected boost of $20 million in our payroll when the offseason began. So that will help give us a little more ability to do something this offseason as soon as we can figure out a way to get Hunter Brown, with by far the highest salary on our team, off of our books. So we will get free agency underway at the beginning of our next episode. In the meantime, between now and then, going to see if I can possibly figure out a way to get Hunter Brown off of the books. It looks like straight up we can't get anything for him, so I'm going to have to get creative, and we unfortunately might have to end up retaining part of his contract, which is certainly, as I often say in this game when I make poor decisions, not optimal. Felt like on paper it was pretty similar to, as I mentioned, Bradish and Lodolo from a year ago, particularly when he declined that offer from us and got kind of angry with us in terms of his attitude. Felt like he was pretty unlikely to opt in, but unfortunately that may cost us a little bit, but still think that the opportunity to have tried to get another supplemental pick made sense in theory, even though it did not work out this year in practice. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.